guys, it's Jackie with the Take a Leap podcast. I'm here with Molly. Molly, what kind of podcasts do you listen to?
I listened to a lot of entrepreneurship podcasts recently. They're for class, but I've really loved them, so I've listened to extra ones.
I listened to a Come Follow Me podcast.
I like business entrepreneurship podcasts.
I think I listen and gain information better when it's like coming through my ears rather than reading it off a page.
It's like you can multitask, like you can go on a run, walk, and like you listen, you actually learn something. I think you like benefit from that. I think everyone should listen to podcasts.
Do you feel like there are too many podcasts?
Yes.
It seems like everyone has podcasts these days.
Yes. Nowadays, probably, yeah.
There are a lot, but I don't blame them either because I'm like, I love to yap, and so I'm like, I get it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Take a Leap podcast. My name is Leah. I'm one of the hosts today. I'm joined by James.
Hello.
Hi, James. And we're so excited today to be talking to Ben Hancock. Hi, Ben.
Hello.
Ben is joining us all the way from, where are you? Somewhere far away.
I'm in Lancashire, England.
In England. So we're in very different time zones, but both very excited to be talking today. Ben is the host and creator of All the Saints and the Country House podcast. He's also the content manager for Modern Wisdom podcast.
Perfect. Ben, you said you're joining us from all the way across the Atlantic Ocean in England. We can tell maybe by your accent that you grew up in England. Did you grow up in Lancashire or somewhere else in England?
I grew up right in the northeast of England, and then I lived there until my mission. Then I moved down to the Midlands, which people in America think sounds like a kind of Lord of the Rings place, the Midlands, but it's like Leicestershire. And then I've recently moved into Lancashire, so it's kind of a new place for me, but I love it. The history is great. We're right next to where the Bronte sisters lived. Oh, wow. All of the dark moors, so it's lovely to be here.
Definitely. Can I ask a personal question before we get into the rest of the faith-based things?
Ooh.
I was stalking
Yes.
your Instagram, as I've been known to do in preparation, and I noticed that you might be a little bit of a soccer fan.
Oh, yes, I'm a football fan.
Sure, a football fan.
Football.
I can speak your lingo, don't worry.
Yeah, I'm a huge soccer fan. It's one of my biggest passions, would you say? I mean, I just enjoy it a lot. I spend a lot of time doing things football related.
That's awesome. So I saw, though, that in one picture you were wearing a Manchester United jersey, and another you were wearing a Manchester City jersey. And I was just wondering, are you a fan of one or the other or neither? What's going on?
I actually have, funnily enough, I don't know why, but I've got a Newcastle jersey right on my desk as well. As my family well know, I like to wear football shirts. Mm-hmm. I'm not a kind of hooligan that's super attached to one team. I'm actually wearing a Burnley Football Club cap as well.
Nice.
I collect them every year. I kind of see the jerseys that I really like, and I usually get them as a birthday gift or something. My family likes to gift me football shirts because I wear them. You'll see on the podcast, you'd think I should be wearing a shirt and tie or something, but I'm usually wearing a different football shirt. When we go on holiday somewhere, I might get the shirt of the local team. I don't know. It's my thing. It's my little thing.
It's okay. I'm also wearing a soccer jersey right now, or it's like a pullover.
Oh, DC United.
Yeah, DC United.
So you remember when our own Wayne Rooney played for DC United, right?
Yes, sir. I was there when he scored a hat-trick, actually. Maybe his only hat-trick for DC United.
Wow.
Yep.
That's cool. That's
Yes,
historic.
Absolutely. Love me some Wayne Rooney. Building off of our football talk. England has a rich history as far as faith, and in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as well. We wanted to ask you about how growing up in England has kind of influenced or shaped your faith.
Yeah, it's a great question. As you say, we have a rich heritage of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints here, and of course wider Christianity. And I would say it's funny, I said this on a recent podcast that I did, is that I look the same as 90% of the people in England, but I was raised in a completely different culture, being a Latter-day Saint. And so I'm usually the only Latter-day Saint in my workplace, in my school, in my college, in my university. And that brings a lot of upsides, but it also kind of, I struggle to really connect with a lot of my peers, I would say, because of that. There was a clear kind of difference. And socially, in England, drinking is a really big social thing. You'd go out on the weekend and drink, and I couldn't really get involved with that kind of culture. So there are those kind of things like that, but at the same time, the church here is just so wonderful, and we're experiencing extraordinary growth across Europe. So it's a really exciting time to be a Latter-day Saint in the UK. And as you say, there's a lot going on with Christianity at the moment that I've been able to get involved with as a Latter-day Saint content creator. And yeah, I love our rich history here.
I'm wondering too, when we're talking about your faithful upbringing, if there was a moment in time when you realized that you did believe in the gospel.
I've been thinking about this and reflecting on my life. I sound like an old person. I've been very lucky, and I guess my friends would say this of me as well, that I've been very lucky to have kind of a firm testimony since I was very young. And I guess you would describe me as a bit churchy, perhaps. And, you know, I get involved in the church. I love to contribute where I can and get stuck in. But my sister was born asleep. She was a stillbirth when I was very young. And that raised some questions for me about would I see my sister again? Because obviously as a very young child, I was so excited. She would be my first sister. I had all brothers. And I was excited to have that. And then we were kind of like, well, that happened, you know. My sister didn't come home. And so I reflected on that. And someone mentioned in church a while after that because she wasn't born properly, that I might not get to be with her in eternity, which is kind of a strange thing to hear. I don't think they said that directly to me, but I vividly remember that being said somewhere at church. And so that led me to investigate from quite a young age, what is the plan of salvation? What is the truth of that? And I had a really lovely witness to me and comfort to me from the Holy Ghost that I would see my sister again and I would get to know her. And that's kind of been a strange comfort throughout my life that, like, you know, the sister that I never had, I have two wonderful sisters now who are alive and well, but at the time I didn't. But that kind of led me to ask those deeper questions of the soul quite early on in my life. It gave me quite a firm testimony that has grown and expanded and widened since then. So kind of unusual, I guess, but that's how it worked for me from quite a young age.
Yeah, that's really powerful. It's interesting too. I have kind of the opposite experience. I had a sister who passed away 5 days after she was born. And I feel like growing up, it made me just really scared of the eternities. And I thought that I had to do everything perfectly or I would never see her again. And that kind of changed, I think, when I started working here a few years ago. There were just a lot of interviews and experiences I had listening to the other podcasts we used to work for, people talking about the plan of salvation or how they envision heaven. So it's interesting that you had kind of the opposite experience from me.
I think it is kind of, you can get into that. Like, there's a content creator guy called Ashley Kane here in the UK, and his daughter, bless him, died of cancer at quite a young age. And obviously that is just a horrible thing. I wouldn't wish anyone to see their young daughter have to go through that. But he has this thing where he sets up a foundation and he pushes himself to the extremes to kind of raise money, and he talks about how if there's a way that he believes that he can be with her again and see her in the next life, he's not a member of our faith, that he will try to live as good a life as he can to ensure it. But sometimes that can go to the extreme where you really push yourself. And that's the beauty of repentance and really understanding Jesus Christ, is that he'll meet you where you are, and you'll be saved by grace after what you can do. And obviously there's a myriad of interpretations of that. But like you said, there's a great peace when you think, you know what, we have an infrastructure of covenants that are designed, like God has created a perfect plan to get us back there and to get us with our families. So we don't have to necessarily push ourselves to the extremes to make sure we're perfect. The sanctification comes through Jesus Christ, not through our own efforts.
Absolutely. I mean, those testimonies, the faith that you two just shared, that hope that comes from Jesus Christ is something that is still able to help across faith boundaries. And I think that kind of leads into our next question. We wanted to ask about, of course, your podcast, For All the Saints, which has many guests that are Latter-day Saints, but not exclusively. And so can you talk to us a little bit about the process of starting that, why you saw the need for it, and just kind of that journey so far?
So the church in Europe had a podcast that they put on during COVID to kind of strengthen members, to give something that was uplifting. And I was asked to come in and have a look at that and consult on it and give strategy advice. And out of that meeting, there was kind of this desire to create something that was more independent so that there could be more flexibility. Because if you understand the wisdom of the church, like having to make sure everything is in order and correlated means that sometimes things can be slower than a quicker paced organization. And as I say, there's great wisdom in that. However, for a podcast, if you want to churn something out every week, you've got to just go off instinct and say, you know what, we should cut that, we should not cut that, we can keep that in, we can have this guest that maybe some people won't like. So that's how it started, essentially, and I found myself hosting it, which was not the intention at the start, and it was quite uncomfortable at first, and still is, but it's been a wonderful experience. I mean, it amazes me, some of the conversations I'm able to have and the response to it from non-members and members alike.
Could you tell us a little bit about what the response has been from members and non-members, like you just said?
Yeah, so from members all over the world, we've had just amazing comments from people. Something I love to do is look at the international church, something I'm quite passionate about. And we had an episode with some of my Latter-day Saint friends in Pakistan, and just to see people's responses around the world, members in the UK, in US and Utah being like, this is so cool. It's amazing to see our friends in Pakistan who sometimes can have a hard time being a member of the church. It's not easy in many parts of the world to be a Latter-day Saint. It's not the easiest path, but yet they do it. And it's so inspiring. And then from non-members, we had a star of the X Factor in the UK, which is like one of the biggest reality shows. And she reached out to me and said, can I share my exclusive faith story with you because my grandma likes your podcast, and her grandma's a devout Catholic. And we just find in my sphere of work and in my just life, I have to kind of mingle with a lot of other faiths because that's just the socio-cultural landscape of the United Kingdom. And so, you know, you find you have so much more in common than you have that separates you. And that's what I care about. And so if there's a guest who I think can really bring some light to a conversation or has something really interesting to say, they don't have to be a Latter-day Saint. And I hope we all do that, and kind of that can strengthen our testimony when we learn things from people outside of our own culture. I really believe that. And we've had so many people on who are not Latter-day Saint, and those conversations are really good. I enjoy them.
I love that. I think that's kind of exactly the same kind of view that we're trying to take to our podcast as we're moving forward with it, is having conversations with people from other religions and other faiths, because there are so many good things that other religions have, and there's so many powerful stories and experiences that we can learn from and grow from people from completely different backgrounds and completely different stories. And I think there's so much value in sharing and listening to other people's stories. And so we love what you're doing with your podcast in order to be able to do that and to bring those stories to people. And I think those are some amazing anecdotes there.
I think it's good to have some religious envy sometimes, in a good way, not like envy, but say we go to the cathedral quite often here to go to midnight mass at Christmas and festivals that they have. We love visiting other churches when they have big events going on. And, you know, Elder Kieran gave that talk about being a joyful church, and that led me to visiting these churches and thinking, what are they doing that really made me feel joyful and welcomed? And I loved in the cathedral that the bishop after the service greeted every single person, and we're talking like 3,000 people. He was at the door as everyone left and left a blessing on everyone. I just thought that made me feel really welcomed and special. And I'm thinking, how can I do that in my own ward? You know, I don't have to be the bishop. I can still make sure everyone feels welcomed, no matter how many people are there. Just things like that, you know, we can learn from them.
Definitely. I remember one time I attended a Catholic Mass with some of my friends, and it was my first time ever being like at another church, like in my entire life, for like a Sunday service. And I just remember there's so many different things that happened in the service, but I was, like you said, you have that envy, you have that like, I want to be able to participate. Like there's certain moments when the congregation recited something together and I was like, I want to be able to recite it too. Like there's some aspect of it that was appealing to me, of being able to participate in this group showing of faith, that they all had devoted the time to learn that recitation, that it meant something to them, that they knew when to say it, that I thought it was very different than what we do at our church, but I could see the value of it and I wanted to be able to participate. And I just remember that I walked away from that experience feeling really uplifted after, even though, you know, it wasn't our church, it was another church, but it was still a fantastic experience. So in addition to having the podcast, it's a very public platform. Do you ever get nervous sharing your faith so publicly?
Yeah, like I'm happy to testify of things that I know are true and share my faith with anyone. That part I don't worry about necessarily, but you get criticism, you get backlash. I'm not really a combative person. I'm happy to celebrate and find common ground, but I'm not necessarily going to challenge people to debates and stuff, because I'd rather, like, I like my personal study. I don't necessarily study for debating, you know. And the cultural aspects, you know, we live in a world where you can step on so many landmines and people can misinterpret what you say or take what you say out of context. And I've had that done before on some episodes that we've done, and it's just like, oh, is it really worth putting your neck out? But I really think it is. And as I say, I didn't put myself forward to hosting this podcast. It's not something that I aspire to or seek out. And I'm confident that Heavenly Father knows that in my heart, and therefore I won't get any kind of bad karma from that. But yeah, it is nerve-wracking at first. But then when I announced it, I had so many people from my university and people that I had no idea had an active, burgeoning faith within them messaging me saying, thank you so much for doing this. I can't wait for it. And I was like, wait, what? And it just made me think, like, why wasn't I more open to having these conversations during university? Like, I could have really played a part in someone's faith being strengthened by not feeling as isolated if I had plucked up the courage to speak to people not on a public platform, you know? I think private platforms where we speak of Christ are far more important, to be honest. Although I'm getting better at sharing it publicly, I definitely want to focus on sharing it privately better, where I'm actually face to face with a person, and for me it's a bit more vulnerable like that. So I don't know.
No, I think that's a fantastic answer. And I agree, it's easier sometimes to just hide behind a microphone and say, oh, this is what I believe. And you're like, oh, maybe no one will listen to this, whatever. But it is important, too, to talk about our faith in our private lives. And I love what you're saying about how you were kind of surprised to be a host of this podcast. When I applied for this job, I literally applied to be a social media manager. And now I'm hosting my own podcast. It's just crazy how things have changed. And it was also a scary adjustment. I still don't feel like I'm qualified or prepared for this at all, but it's getting better. I feel like it's fun. And my favorite part is just listening to other people's stories. A lot of the times just am quiet, and I don't know. Sometimes people get mad at me and say, Leah, you need to talk more. But I just love listening to other people's stories. I don't want to share.
I got told on my last episode that I need to talk less. So I'm like going through the pride cycle. I've never had that comment before where someone was like, you need to talk less, Ben. I was like, oh, wow. Normally I need to talk more.
Yeah.
So
I mean, the first time I hosted an episode of Take a Leap, it was because the other host was sick or wasn't there for some reason, and Leo was just like, so Josh isn't here, you're going to have to host today. And I was like, what do you even do? Like, how do you prepare for it? How do you like talk to people? How do you ask the questions? Like, all these different things. I don't think I'm good at it yet, so I won't say that I've learned, but, you know, it's definitely a blessing and an opportunity, though, to have a platform to be able to be in front of a microphone and another person and talk about faith. It's an amazing blessing. And it's something that I think our generation especially is hungry for and is in need of hearing that kind of content and is searching for that content. Is that something that you've kind of felt as well? Maybe, I mean, you've seen this, the audience, I'm sure, isn't just Gen Z necessarily. For you, that's kind of our target audience is like Gen Z and like young millennials. But do you feel that way as well? There's something about Gen Z that is very open spiritually, even if they're not all necessarily religious.
yeah, I certainly think there's a renaissance of faith within that generation. And you see that across societal statistics that are coming out. For example, in the UK, we have more people 18 to 34 praying than we have done since 1970 currently. There are tons of stats like this where Gen Z are attending church and praying at double the rate of their older generations. You don't expect that, but then the stats are all there. And I'm just so impressed by Gen Z, and I think they've really got level heads, which is fantastic. So I hope that continues. But I definitely see that renaissance of faith. I mean, in the wards where I've been to recently, when they have missionaries going out, those missionaries are far more prepared and ready for it than I was and my peers were when we went out on missions. And that's great to see. Some of my siblings are out on their mission now, and I'm just like, man, that's just so impressive. Far more impressive than I was at that age with the gospel and with several aspects of life. They're just like They're a really great generation, and so the future is in good hands, I think. And I think it hasn't been in good hands for a long time, so I think Gen Z will be good stewards of the earth, of politics, of business, of morals. I really hope that continues.
Ben, I know you have to leave pretty soon. We just have one quick question, and then we can wrap up. We saw online that you're about to become a father. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And we just want to know kind of how does your faith, or will your faith, do you think affect the way that you parent a child, and what kind of world do you hope that this child grows up in?
Wow, what a question. Wow.
I know.
It kind of builds on the last one a little bit.
Yeah. My faith is everything when it comes to my expectations of parenting. The reality may differ, but I'll tell you, I've undergone a kind of chronic autoimmune illness the last 10 months, basically the entirety of my wife's pregnancy, which has been incredibly difficult. And I'm coming out of the other end of it, but I'm still experiencing that, and probably will be for a while. And so there have been a lot of faith testing experiences during that time. And when I consider hope and faith and what keeps me going when I have a really hard day and just want to give up and on everything, and then I think, flippin' heck, we've got a child on the way. It's coming in March. Like, I'm totally unprepared for that. And yet, just in the sense of when I read in scripture and those people that through hard times had Jesus Christ there as hope, God's gift of a daughter to me and my wife to start our family has been basically the only thing that's kept me going. And so I very much see our child in the same way that, say, the Nephites saw the coming of Christ in a very real sense that was coming upon them in urgent fashion. I feel that too, and as I think about that, I can't wait to constantly be talking of Christ to my daughter, and hopefully having a home environment and raising her in a place where she can live out her faith. And it's such a big question. I hope I can do a good job. And my wife is excellent, and I have no doubt that she'll be an amazing mother who will teach the gospel very well. And I hope I can be that example to my daughter in the home. I think example is the most powerful thing, right? And certainly the last several months has taught me many lessons and broken me down in some ways that are rough to go through, but also very good to make my faith genuinely authentic. I had, maybe this is too much information, but I don't know, I'll share it, in that a lot of my condition was to do with my skin. And so I couldn't wear a suit to church. And I think church, I love going to church, but there is an aspect of it where you're like keeping up appearances, right? You want to kind of look good, you want to make friends there, and and I was faced with the reality of having to wear like very casual clothes to church and thinking, what will people think of me? People will judge me. And I went to church despite that, and that wasn't the case. People came up and expressed love for me, and that really taught me powerful lessons and made my faith very authentic, where I was like, I now know why I'm going to church. And if I have to go to church in a Newcastle football shirt, so be it. God wants me to be there. And so, I've learned a lot in preparation for this coming experience, and hopefully I can do a good job. And yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Well, it sounds like your daughter's going to have an amazing father, and I'm sure an amazing mother as well. Thank you so much for joining us, Ben. Thank you for your faith and for everything that you do to show it and to help other people find theirs and grow theirs.
No, thank you both. Thank you both for this opportunity. I always love speaking to people about the gospel and podcasting and all that. So thanks for what you're doing.
Thank you so much to Ben Hancock for joining us all the way from England. If you enjoyed listening to him, feel free to check out his podcast at For All the Saints with Ben Hancock, or his Instagram at For All the Saints Pod. Ben mentioned that sometimes it's hard to share your faith behind a microphone, and, sometimes it's also hard to do credits behind a microphone. So thank you for sticking around and listening to them anyway, because, the credits, they're really important. They tell you so much about the show, about things you can check out. If you like listening to credits, feel free to listen to every single second of all our other episodes, and there'll be more coming out every Tuesday. Take a Leap is a production of BYU Radio. We'll catch you next week. Bye.